The campaign for the southern city of Vicksburg was a brilliantly executed campaign for the Union, in which Grant, despite some setbacks, was able to eventually capture the strategic fortress of Vicksburg. Up to this point, Union General Ulysses S. Grant seems to be stumped in finding a way to subdue the city of Vicksburg on the Mississippi River, which by 1863 is one of the only remaining connections between the two halves of the Confederacy. The city's garrison under General John C. Pemberton has done an excellent job in holding the Union forces at bay, but Grant is not about to give up. With the terrain north of Vicksburg completely bogged over, Grant plans to go south in a campaign which many historians have called the greatest campaign of the Civil War. The first step to see if Grant's plan even has a chance is to run a squadron of Union gunboats and transports commanded by Admiral David D. Porter down the Mississippi River past the guns of Vicksburg. On the night of April 16th, the Union flotilla moves silently down the river. Suddenly, Confederate guns on the Vicksburg bluffs open fire. For the next few minutes, the guns on both the bluffs and the river roar. With the loss of only one boat, the Navy has successfully bypassed Vicksburg. This operation is so successful that Grant attempts a similarly successful run on April 22. Now, Grant has a Navy force downriver to operate against Vicksburg. The next step is diversion. Grant orders Sherman to launch several feints against Vicksburg from the north. This keeps the Confederate attention north of the city. He also launches a cavalry detachment commanded by Colonel Benjamin Grierson to strike south of the Confederate supply lines. This force starts out to the east of Memphis on April 17th, and by mid-March, Grierson reaches Baton Rouge, having burnt and destroyed just about everything in his path. This also succeeds in drawing most of the Confederate cavalry in the area away from watching the Mississippi River, thus giving Grant the advantage of surprise. Grant marches his army down to Grand Gulf, where he plans to cross and march on Vicksburg from there. However, the Confederate cannon there prevent crossing, so Grant marches further south and crosses instead at Bruinsburg. Now Grant is on the same side of the river as his goal, but the Confederates aren't going to give it to him without a fight. Thus, on May 1st, as McClernand's corps moves forward, it runs into Confederate troops near Port Gibson. The Confederates attempt to hold, but they are soon overwhelmed and forced to fall back. Now Grant, instead of taking the direct route to Vicksburg, decides to keep the rebels guessing, and so he breaks off from his supply lines and moves northeast towards Jackson, Mississippi. Seeing this move, Confederate General Joseph E. Johnston, who is the department's commander, gives orders for Pemberton to march out from Vicksburg and join him near Jackson. However, Grant marches faster than expected, and so Johnston sends an detachment of the Jackson garrison to attempt to slow down Grant and his army. The Confederates attack the Federal columns outside the city of Raymond, and soon a fight erupts. After a short fight, the Confederates, who are outnumbered 3-1, pull out, and the Union Army continues its march to Jackson. By the time the Union Army reaches Jackson, most rebels have already pulled out, and after a short skirmish, the Union troops drive the rest of the Confederates out. Not wanting to waste men and supplies on guarding Jackson, Grant puts everything of military value to the torch. He then begins to march his army west towards Vicksburg. Pemberton, however, knows little of what has happened at Jackson and is now marching east in an attempt to cut Grant's supply lines. Little does he know that Grant is marching straight towards him. 2 days later, the Union columns run into the Confederate army, which is deployed around a hill owned by Sid Champion. Both sides then form, and the Union army ferociously attacks the Confederate line.
Aim. Fire. Reload. Fire. Aim. Fire. Reload. Fire at will.
Before long, all three of Grant's corps converge and drive the Confederates off Champion Hill. They now threaten to cut Pemberton off from his escape route. In the confused retreat that follows, one of Pemberton's divisions is cut off from the main army and forced to head south, while the rest of the army heads west. Grant wastes little time in reforming and then chasing Pemberton towards Vicksburg. The lost Confederate division under General Loring begins to move towards Johnston's army instead of attempting to reunite with Pemberton. Unaware of this, Pemberton halts the army to await the missing division at the Big Black River. Instead, on May 17th, Union soldiers arrive and attack. Overwhelmed and caught by surprise, the Confederate troops are routed from their position and retreat across the Big Black River, burning the bridge behind them. Grant's army quickly builds a pontoon bridge and then pursues. The Confederate army reaches Vicksburg without any further harm. However, Grant arrives soon after and quickly makes plans for an attack on the city's defenses. On May 19th, Sherman's division attacks the northern end of the rebel line.
Ready? Aim. Fire. Slow. Fire at will.
Take care of the macaroon.
Reform. Fire.
The Confederates, behind their earthen walls, fight ferociously and soon drive the Union troops back, having inflicted almost 1,000 casualties while only receiving 70. Grant is not shaken, however, and on May 22nd launches a second assault preceded by an artillery bombardment. This attack is made with almost the entire Union army.
Fire. Get to the ramparts. Ready? Aim. Fire.
The result is almost the same, apart from a few minor breakthroughs which are soundly beaten back. The Union line is cut to pieces and forced to retreat. With the loss of another 3,000 men, Grant reluctantly orders a siege. The Union soldiers dig in, and for the next month, Union cannons pound the Confederate earthworks, while Union gunboats on the Mississippi River launch shells into the city itself. The residents of Vicksburg moved to live in caves for safety. In mid-June, Union engineers begin to dig a tunnel under the Confederate line, and on June 25th, the mine, loaded with explosives, is detonated. Following this eruption, Union troops charge into the Confederate line, but the Confederates quickly counterattack and build a new line of defense, while lobbing hand grenades at the attacking Federals. After 20 hours of fighting, Grant pulls the Union troops out and the siege continues. By the beginning of July, Pemberton has few options left, with starvation becoming a serious problem and snipers picking his men off daily. Surrender seems imminent. Thus, on July the 3rd, Pemberton gives the order to surrender. Grant and him then meet to discuss terms of surrender. Grant at first demands unconditional surrender, but upon reflection on what he would do with 30,000 prisoners, he agrees to have the entire Confederate army paroled. On the 4th of July, Union troops officially take control of the city, and Grant becomes a hero in the North. Along with the surrender of Port Hudson on July 9th, the Mississippi River is now entirely under Union control. This means that the Confederacy is now divided from north to south. Battle of Vicksburg. Dead, Union, about 1,600. Confederate, about 1,500. Wounded, captured, and missing, Union, about 9,000. Confederate, about 7,700, plus 30,000 captured and paroled. Total, Union, 10,600. Confederate, 39,200.